Welcome to this week's Real Talk with Tia and Jill. We're so
Hello.
happy to have you here.
Yes, good morning. Hi, Lena. Good to see you out there this Wednesday afternoon for me.
Oh, true. Yeah, it is already afternoon for you.
1 minute past.
Excited to have all of you with us as well.
We are, because we have a great topic today. And Jill, when we were coming up with this topic, we were kind of excited about just the aspects of like how do you keep the momentum going around leadership? Because many times, right, and we ran into leaders like this just because this is our business and we talk to people about leadership all the time, where especially, I'm going to pick on senior leaders for a moment. Senior leaders, we get into a spot where we just stop learning, right? It feels like, oh, well, first of all, busy, right? Just busy from work and all of those things. But we almost get this false sense of, yes, I have everything figured out. I've done this before. I've been there. I've seen this. And then we get stagnant, right?
Yeah. And I mean, even though you say senior leaders, it happens in other spaces as well, where you're like, well, I already did that how to resolve conflict class.
Oh, yes.
I don't need to do it again.
Yes.
Or I've already taken a, more effective communication class. So how would another one help?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We see that. And maybe we've even been there, right? Like even thinking about our audience, and maybe you're thinking, yeah, I've been there, where it's like, yeah, I've sat through this before. I've taken a workshop. And then you realize, right, a year later, 2 years later, that your team is different, or maybe you're on a different team. You're supposed to be leading in a different way, but you find yourself stagnant.
Yeah. And I think it all goes back to this philosophy about being intentional with leadership. And I can say, I didn't, you all know I've shared, I didn't do it right as a leader. I had to learn and practice and get better, but I didn't show up every day and think, how am I stepping into my leadership today? Or every week? Like, what am I doing here for my leadership? How am I helping people grow? How am I growing? Wow. Those weren't the things that were on my to-do list. And so they didn't get the attention that they needed. And so even if I did go to a great, like, effective communication class, and I'm using that just because that's our topic tomorrow, right? In enrichment. But even if I went to that, I'd be like, that's awesome. We've all done that, where you walk away, you maybe make a change, or you do it for a week, and then it kind of falls off the radar again. The momentum is gone.
Yes. Or the ones that you sit in and they're not relatable. Right. It's one of the things that at Catalyst, that's part of our values, right? Is that what we offer is relatable to the industry, because I've sat through those training and you literally see people's eyes, right? Not really paying attention, don't really see how this relates to a 24-hour operations, or people who work swing shift in a food, in a food manufacturing facility or in food service. And because people can't make those connections while they're in the training, it's gone the moment they step outside of the training. So they're not even using what they were supposed to pick up or take away from those trainings. And then it's just lost. And then their leaders feel like, check, yep, we did it.
Yeah.
When in reality, there's no movement, right?
No.
There's no movement.
Nope. So we know leadership takes more than just good intentions. It requires a rhythm, it takes reinforcement and reflection. So if you're like, how do I keep the momentum going? You're at the right place, because that's what we're talking about today.
That's what we're talking about. So please say hello in the chat so we can say hello back, engage, add your comments, add your thoughts, because we would love to hear from you, as well as your questions, and we will address them on the show.
Absolutely.
And if this is your first time with us, I'm Tia, this is Jill, and we are the co-founders of Catalyst. And our whole mission is around transforming leaders, right? So we can show up empowered, living authentically, achieve amazing results, right? And business growth, which is the reason why we are all hired in the first place. And this is a great topic for us. And you kind of mentioned enrichment, because we're talking about effective communication tomorrow, we invite you to join us, because as we think about this momentum, whether you've been through one of our programs or you just came out of leadership development, or maybe you're thinking about, oh yeah, I did do that online training last year and I don't really remember those things, or I'm not really practicing those things. That's why enrichment exists. It exists so that you can keep that momentum going. And this month we're talking about effective communication. So join us. You can get 3 months free. Check it out on our website. We can add a link to this Real Talk as well. We would love to see you there and hear your thoughts around it.
Yeah. So even as we talk about leadership momentum, I think about how different people define it. For some people, they're excited. There's this momentum. Some people are like, I'm not super excited, but I need movement. I want movement. So really, as you think about your own leadership momentum, we invite you to think about, what does that look and feel like?
Yeah. And we would love for you to share in the comments. Like, what does momentum feel like to you? Is it this excitement of, growth, of practicing, right? And some people that feels exciting to people on like, I can take on these new tasks or I can practice in different new ways. But I also see the other side where people are like, I need some work, right? Yeah. And to practice conflict means I need to be in some conflict, right? And so it's one of those things that might not excite some people.
True. But it is about this, even as we talked about it yesterday, right? It's this, like, what is the recurring practice that keeps us intentional about our leadership? And that could be because it's aligned with our values as a human. I could talk about, like, there were times I did things as a leader. I'm like, that doesn't feel good, not aligned. Yeah. But it's because I thought that was what leadership needed to look like. But it's also about leadership for, like, am I serving people the way that I want to and need to?
Yeah.
Am I leading so that not only am my team loving me, but we're also generating fantastic results and working with others in our organization? That all takes intention. And that's why this momentum is so important.
Yes, it is. It is. And it's important, just as you think about your own personal and personal, right? Personal and professional growth is what I'm meaning to say. As you think about momentum. But, even when I think momentum is an important part of the conversation, because development itself, like, there's fatigue in that, right? It's fatigue in we kind of call it the explore phase, where you're really learning these concepts, right? Like, you can only take so much of concepts being put into your brain before you have to move to the practice phase for us, where that momentum is happening and continuing. Otherwise, you kind of get stuck.
Well, and it is real, development fatigue. We talk about this all the time, even as we get, like, partway through our programs, right? People are feeling like, whoo, right? We are in this and we're learning new concepts. We're practicing new things. And so this is the cadence on our momentum. Like, we may have these spurts or whatever it looks like for you. Maybe it's these intensive areas of where we have growth and it's structured. And then what are the things that we kind of sprinkle in to help us on our journey till we are at the next point?
Yeah. And this is really where rituals come in, right?
Oh, for sure. Right. Because it's so easy to be like, well, I did this and then I'm done. And now it's open land, barren land. How do we make sure that I'll use the barren land, right? How do I make sure along the way there's, water and a rest stop and, maybe some food, and, like, those are the things that are going to help refuel us as leaders to continue on this path.
This is something, and, this is just a thought that I had, like, when we think about leadership development in our workspaces and we build, like, maybe our development plan, right? And we talk about, I want to learn how to influence more. And our manager says, yes, go and take this course, or, sign up for Catalyst Leadership Bootcamp. But then there's no follow-up afterwards, right? There's no ritual on how are you going to continue to practice and reflect on what you're doing. And it's almost like, okay, once I've heard it, check, I should be good. But we know that's not how human behaviors work. And so, wish that managers would also follow up, right? Follow up afterwards. And we help our clients do this because we know it's, like you said, we are busy. We got a lot going on, right? And most people don't follow up with leadership in that way. So we, of course, have built in things, right? So you can have these rituals of, after I kind of learn this, explore and understand how it relates to what I'm doing, how do I continue to stick to it? And I wish that was like built in, which I guess is the reason why we created Catalyst, but I wish it was built into that development piece within organizations so that you can continuously come back to, well, what are you doing around influence this year? Right? How are you building on that each year and getting better at it as your roles change, as people change?
When I think about leadership development and the momentum, it reminds me of when I hear discussions around self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we all know it's important, but when we are kind of constrained for time or resources, it's one of the things that often doesn't get the attention that we need. Even though most people will say, oh, that recharges me. That helps me like refuel so I can get back out there. It's that whole analogy of like when our batteries are low, like we can't, spark anything or shine light for others.
Mm-hmm.
Like leadership development and this leadership momentum is really the same thing of how do we make sure we're refilling the battery, like recharging it? How do we really equate this to the self-care we need as leaders so that we have these moments where we have high pressure in our roles, where there's a lot happening, when burnout is real. So how do we prepare ourselves and keep us at our best to be able to get through those?
Yeah. Ooh, like a leadership self-care packet.
Oh, I never thought of it like that, but it is.
It is.
It is.
I like
and self-care, right, isn't just one thing. It can look different. And depending on how much time you have, how much you want to invest, like all these things, what fills you up is different. Like what I like is different than what you like.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. What you do for self-care, right, is different than what I might do for it. But the goal is that people who are in tune with self-care, they know you have to keep that momentum going, right? They know. And a piece of that, I think, is also when you think about, I like the self-care analogy. So I'll keep with it because this year, just as my goal, it is around self-care. A piece of it is around self-care, whether it's like skincare, right? Resting. People, you all know I have a 3-year-old toddler. So I'm just at this moment that I'm trying to balance, right, my own self-care as well as family life. But you have to keep that momentum going. Otherwise, you fall back into the same things you were doing, right? You fall back into not getting my monthly massage, right? And now my shoulder's hurting, right? And those things where, because I hold tension in my shoulders, you can fall out of that real quick if you are not actually putting intention, right, in your energy towards it to make sure that those rituals are not falling apart. That's the momentum piece.
Yeah. That's why I love that we're going to talk about leadership momentum today. Like, how do we, there's these macro processes that, we talk about: the explore, practice, reflect. We do that in our programs for concepts that we do, but it also exists here in this bigger umbrella of how do we do this with our own leadership momentum over time as well.
Yes. Yes. Oh, Elena. Yes. Having a buddy system. Right? That accountability partner and community, right? Having a community around you, accountability partners, someone that can help you stay, like you said, stay balanced and prioritize that balance. Absolutely.
Well, and I think that's a really important part about, even as we think about as leaders, where do we come back to have that community and that accountability?
Yes.
That we are keeping our momentum going.
And
that's why we're going to talk about all that today.
Yes. And it's funny, like for people who know us, right, know more about Catalyst, but if you're new, you'll see the alignment between how we built Catalyst and this leadership momentum. And when we started Catalyst, we didn't talk about it in terms of leadership momentum, but that's exactly what we are. We're that accountability partner, right? That buddy with you, that as you learn leadership and you are practicing, right, exploring and reflecting, we have programs in place to help push that momentum forward. And we just didn't talk about it in terms of leadership momentum, but that's exactly what it is, right? To help you stay on pace, to grow as a leader, even as things shift.
Yeah. Yeah. That is funny because we never did talk about that. But like we've got the stretches of like I'm going to say more intensive program, like development in some of our programs, but we also have the things to sprinkle in.
Yeah.
So whether it's the enrichment once a month or the roundtables that are coming up are, you know, a few weeks, like 4 weeks at a time, the workshop series. So we've built it so that if you're like, how do I do momentum? How do I keep that going? Like we did, we can help you with that.
Yes, absolutely.
But the biggest part is finding like what the cadence and rhythm is that fits for you where you are today. That's the first thing that you have to think about with your leadership momentum.
Yes, yes. And we love this because you can partner it with, like, when you talk about that rhythm, what is your ritual? What is your leadership growth ritual that keeps you committed, right? And keeps that momentum going.
Yeah.
Even like around accountability, right? Like, how is accountability built into your ritual?
And even to challenge ourselves to think outside what we think we know. I'm going to use this example because in our boot camp right now, I think we had 2 or 3 people who said, I was told I'm taking boot camp. And then I was like, how am I ever going to fit this into my work and life right now? And they are the ones who are like, this is the best hour of my week.
Yes.
Like,
we love.
After the first session, they were like, oh, this isn't adding to my workload. It's helping me get through my workload. And I think sometimes that's, I mean, as a human, and I've done this where I'm like, I can't take another thing on, even if I think it's going to be helpful longer term.
Right. Yes. Yes.
So we have to think about what is that cadence and rhythm for where we are right now, but also challenge ourselves to think a little bit outside of what we think we can handle, because we were built to handle hard things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what's critical, right? Like these leaders that are going through boot camp where they know that they're busy, right? And thought this was going to add, well, now it's not, right? And they're using this time to really dive deeper into the things that they have going on so that they can solve them. And that's helping them free up time. And so when we think about this rhythm, you know, programs like Bootcamp, right? There's already a rhythm kind of built into it where we meet weekly, you know, strategic, we're meeting less frequent, but we still have this cadence going on. We built in this rhythm for you. And then we also talk about how are you going to continue this afterwards? Like, what is that rhythm? And many people, I have this time blocked out. So even if I'm not in Bootcamp, I'm here thinking about my leadership and planning, you know, whatever I've been practicing, what I've been working on, or I'm joining enrichment, right? So I have that hour, you know, that monthly time where I can sit down and think about how have I been leading and how do I want to shift to help. So that's one way is thinking about how often are you reflecting and how are you doing that with the community, right? With your accountability partners.
Yeah. So I think that's the first part of thinking about your leadership momentum. What is the rhythm so that you can reflect, that you can challenge yourself, and that you can practice? Like that takes a rhythm and a ritual to get into it.
It does. And I always like to say this for people who are like, well, you know, right now I can do weekly, you know, in the fall, maybe I can do monthly. Yes, things come up, and it doesn't mean that your rituals can't shift as your life shifts, right? Really think about what is it that I need right now? What kind of momentum do I need right now? Am I in something where I really need to be a strong leader for my team because we're working on strengthening our culture, or we just had a critical incident, or, you know, insert? Well, you might need to have a more detailed ritual, right? Where you're checking in more often versus I'm in maintenance, right? A monthly enrichment, that's enough for me to keep that maintenance going, right? Until it's time for me to do more. So I know I'm sometimes like this, where it's hard for me to think, oh, well, what about this? What about this and that? Choose what worked best for you today, right? And as they shift, you can always shift your rituals.
Yeah. I think that's really important. And I think as we think about momentum, one of the things that we talked about and Elena even brought up is like, how do we stay connected? Because it's easy to let it slide, especially if we don't have anybody over there that's like, Tia, I haven't seen you for 3 months. What's been going on? When you have that community around you, it's easier to stay connected, to be on the cadence and on that rhythm and ritual that you have established for yourself.
And even those times that you even like trick yourself into, oh, well, I kind of did the work. I think I'm fine. I'm not going to tell anyone about it, right? Just in case I need to shift something, right? But that accountability partner, that community, the people you're having conversations with, they check in and saying, I know it's a busy week. Have you reflected? Or I know, and we talk about this a lot in our programs where we ask the question, right? What have you been practicing? Some people are super busy, right? And they're like, I'm not sure, right? Or I haven't had time to practice. Yeah. We really talk about how do you practice during those times that you are busy? How are you staying intentional? And those conversations, the community helps you think about that even in moments of crisis. Even when you're busy, to say, oh man, I am dealing with this fire, but Jill reminded me, I need to stay present, right? I need to stay present. I need to stay intentional, even in these situations.
You bring up a good point about, really the importance of this external partner. And I'm going to, we in coaching, right, we often talk about like, we are whole, resourceful beings. And that part of what we we hope people capture is this deeper self-awareness so that they can look internally to find answers because they are whole and resourceful. But it is amazing. Like, we know we all have this, this lizard, they call it lizard brain, right? This lizard brain that tries to tell us that, it looks for risk. It looks for things that are going on. It tries to keep us safe and in our comfort zone.
Yes.
So when that voice gets louder, it's sometimes harder for us to really focus in on that next layer underneath to say, where am I right now? What do I need? And so you'll often hear us talk about like this introspective work is so important, and it is. But because of this lizard brain and how it kicks in to keep us in our comfort zone, this external partner is so critical. To be able to step in when we have those moments of the thought process, the thought patterns we're having need to be broken.
Yes.
Like when you're in that moment, you're like, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do it. We need you to be the little choo-choo that could. Like,
right. Yes.
I think I can. And I think about how staying in community, how often do we hear people in our programs that are like, ooh, my favorite part is group session.
Yes.
Because I get to also get insights and learn from those around me.
Yes.
It stretches what we're thinking. It expands what we think is possible.
And it's so many times that we've had people say, wow, why did I not think of that? Right? Why did I not think of that? They just needed someone to jog that for them. And then it's like, yes, I know what to do, right? I know what my next step should be. And that community is just so powerful. It's one of the reasons that all of our programs, all of our leadership development programs have some type of group session associated with it. Because that learning, that community, that accountability, people always tell us like, okay, I need to think about what I'm practicing because I know you're going to ask next week. Right. Yeah. Like that accountability piece to keep you on track is just so important.
Yeah. And I love how that just deepens what we learn and how we take things in. And it's really helping us exercise, we call it, right, leadership muscles.
Yeah.
Like we are constantly coming back when we have this momentum and staying in conversation for what these muscles are like, and really making sure that they're, staying toned or getting stronger or whatever that is.
Yeah. It makes me think about Catalyst Roundtables, which is launching later this year in the summer, which we're super excited about.
It's not that far away. It's still like a month away.
In June. Yes. And the reason why I bring them up is because, we really find those moments that we have something going on and we need to talk through this problem, right? We need our community to help solve this problem. How can I step up as a leader to solve a food safety issue, right? Or to insert, right, an operational issue or something that's breaking down. Catalyst roundtables is really there for you to engage with like-minded people that probably have seen some issues that you've seen or similar, that can help you stretch your way of thinking, right? To help you think about other possibilities and to try different things, and to be, right, that choo-choo of like, yes, you can do this. You are the right leader for it. And so I'm super excited about Catalyst roundtables because I am like I'm kind of a nerd around problem solving just in general. I love problem solving. I love formal problem solving. And I think that Catalyst roundtables is something where you're able to quickly solve problems. And when I think about this momentum and when conflict comes up, whether it's a problem or people conflict or insert whatever that conflict happens to be, when you have a ritual and when you have resources that can help you solve problems quickly, that's what you want. And so we created roundtables to help you do that.
We did. And what I love is it actually was kind of an extension of something that we did way back. Like back when I was food safety coach, we had peer circles. And people kept saying like, wow, that was so helpful. Like it was so great to have this group, this community that of known people that are in my circle that I can come back to and really get some new perspectives, but also share. I think that's the other part. We forget how important it is for us to share our experiences and provide insights to others. So I love this. I'm a little biased too. I like the roundtables because people liked them and we heard that and we saw this. We saw that this was needed. So.
Yes, absolutely. So that's the second one, is that you want to stay in conversation, right? You want to keep your community and make sure you have those accountability partners there to help you stretch your thinking, to help you really tap into your next steps. And I think, Elena, really, your comment really goes into the next section of connecting to your why, right? Connecting your growth to your bigger why. And when you talk about like, flexibility around how you meet your goals, that's understanding what your North Star is, right? Like I want to get healthy. And sometimes that means, like you said, drinking enough water. Sometimes that means I need to prioritize sleep today. And that's important for you to have that flexibility and understand it and what your why is. Like, why are you doing these things? Why do you need to prioritize sleep today? Right? If you don't understand that, you can get off track.
Yeah. And I think as a leader, we go through these phases as well where it's not that our ultimate why changes, but along the path, the why of how do I get from here to the next step or to the next level do shift. So, as you think about even that connecting to the bigger why along this momentum journey, that's going to ebb and flow.
Yeah.
So
that's okay.
Straight up, right? When I had kids, my bigger why for leading was how do I make sure everybody has what they need, but I have to balance my energy differently right now.
Yes.
But it also made me really hone in on what are the things that need to be happening as a leader.
Right. Yeah.
Versus when now that my kids are older, I have a little more space, it feels, around me. And that looks a little bit differently.
Yeah. It's like that.
So it does really connect personal and professional together because, right, there are times in our personal life needs a little more attention. There's times our professional life needs a little bit more support and energy.
Yeah. It's that how you're getting there, right? That shifts as our lives shift. And we talk about this so much on why it is important to think about your personal life, right? Think about your life as a whole, not just your work life, because your personal life shifts how you show up at work and vice versa. And if you're not looking at it holistically, you're missing some things, right? Yes. And even as you talk about your why, like why you are a leader in an organization or why you want to lead others in whatever way, you becoming a mom, how you did that looked different after that. But you are still interested in people, right? And, just I'm relatively new to motherhood. I know that even shifts the way you even look at people. Once you have your own person, right? Or persons, right? That shift even the way that you interact with people. But for me, that strengthened my why on like why I do this type of work, because I want humans out in the world that know how to lead, right? Like if you know how to be more self-aware, if you know how to build, relationships and create safe spaces and have trust, like those are all the things I want at work and in life, right? Like even going to the grocery store, if my community around me is focusing on how do I build better connections with people, like that means people are nicer. People are wondering, hey, can I help you along your way? Like that's just built a stronger community. And so like that just kind of helps me build a stronger why, but I'm also really connected to my why. Yeah. If you don't know what your why is, then you might feel like you're kind of shifting around because you don't have your North Star.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think as we look at momentum, right, that needs to be momentum that fits us personally and professionally because of that. Mm-hmm. And as we said, those ebb and flow a bit. And so there is this flexibility, like Elena talks about, that we do incorporate in, but it's still part of the ritual of keeping our momentum going.
Yes. There's a purpose, right? There's a purpose to helping you connect to your purpose, right? To your why, as a part of this momentum. Mm-hmm. It's almost like, I don't know if this is a part of the forgetting curve, but like if you say your intention, like we do intention statements, even in the beginning of Bootcamp, and you never revisit it again, it's like it didn't exist, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's as if you are not actually being intentional, even though you wrote it down, right? You said it, but if you don't revisit it, then momentum is going to stop with that. And that's just human behavior, right? We've said it a few times, right? We're busy as humans. We have a lot going on at work, right? And at home. Mm-hmm. If we're not careful, right, we would lose that momentum. So making sure, right, you have those connection points. Coming back to it keeps that momentum going, keeps your why in front of you, your intention in front of you.
It does. Yep. At all the stages. As you talk about Bootcamp, it reminds me of like in strategic, we really define who we are as leaders. Mm-hmm. And that is part of the North Star of like, how does that fit in my values? Yes. How does that fit with my company values and people around me? And how does that lead the momentum of what I need to keep being in this space and showing up as that leader that I want to be?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. And I think that kind of speaks to that shift you were talking about that can happen as you grow as a leader, where early leaders might be thinking more on like themselves, right? How do I become more aware of myself? Versus like in strategic, like you said, we really focus on, who am I as a leader for others? Mm-hmm. And then even as we think about visionary, right? Like that's a different type of leadership where these leaders are thinking about how do I not just take care of my teams, but how do I take care of other teams, right? As I lead from this even broader perspective. And so, I think that speaks to what you were talking about earlier, just as a leader, like what am I trying to accomplish, right? What role do I have? And how do I use these leadership skills, right? To make it easier and better for myself and for others. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So even as we think about momentum, it's so important to think about how it's visible and, dare I say, fun.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, we always want to bring the fun. That's one of our values of bringing the wow, right?
It is. And we like to think that we're fun.
I know. Nobody's told us otherwise.
That's true. But it's intentional, right? It's intentional to be fun.
It is. But, even with our momentum, thinking about, we all learn in different ways, and what that will look like is different for everyone. So thinking about what does visible mean for me is going to be different than visible for you, visible for Elena, visible for other people.
Yes.
But you still need to see it, because that's part of what's fueling our thoughts up here that are like, yep, I see a win. Yep, I see something fun. Yes. So what that looks like needs to be kind of defined. It doesn't mean it has to be like written in stone, but think about, how do I know? How do I notice? How do I share in this growth journey?
I think this one is really important and one that we forget because many times I think just as like leadership development growth, we almost go into ourselves. Like, I need to learn this, right? As we should, right? We need to look at ourselves. We need to look at how that's impacting others and contributing to things. But then we kind of keep it there versus like even shouting from the rooftop of like, hey, I need to become a better communicator. So these are the things that I'm doing. And this is how I've seen that shift. Communicating that with others. I love it. You said it earlier, is the importance of sharing. We just don't, I feel like we don't talk about that enough just as human beings, but sharing is also a part of growth for the person who is sharing. And then obviously from the person that's getting that information. We don't talk about that enough. I feel like that's actually a really good topic. Maybe
well, it is. Because I mean, this journey is work. It is work. And leadership is hard.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it can't be, I mean, it is fun and it is hard, but that's part of why we sign up for it.
That's right.
And even when we think not only our personal journey about like, how do we make it visible, but if I'm in an organization and my role as a leader is to help others develop as well, how am I making it visible?
Yes.
I think we go places and we take a class and then that's it. But showcase that. That is just as important. And dare I say, should be a KPI that you have if you are focused on culture.
100%.
It should be about how are you developing people and not just the check the box training. That needs to be shared.
Yes.
People need to celebrate that because that is important in culture.
Absolutely. And people have cool ideas on how to share, right? Like leadership wins on a board.
Yeah.
I also, it's so funny. Last night we went to Home Depot and they had like this like shout out. I can't remember what it was. It was like a Bravo, maybe Bravo, like a Bravo shout out or something. And you saw like all the Bravo cards of people that they have shouted out. And it wasn't necessarily for us to see as customers. It was kind of behind the desk. But that's still visible, right? Obviously, I could see it, but also they can see it as they walk and talk amongst themselves. They see that we have these leadership wins going on here at this location, right? Is what that one was for. So even things like that, whether it's physical, whether it's digital, how are you celebrating those wins in that growth?
Yeah. That actually makes me think about how we even showcase that more with people that come through our programs and are part of what we do, because we are going to practice more of what we talk about, because we do some of that. We also really want to be mindful of people's journey and where they are. But the more we help show this is growth and it should be celebrated, the more it normalizes it.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
Right.
All about celebration, right? And how to celebrate more. And I love the way that you're thinking. And we hope the people that are even listening, right, that you're thinking about, how do I celebrate more, right? How do I celebrate myself more? How do I celebrate others more on this journey? And each year, right, that's that momentum. How do we keep celebrating? How do we shift the way that we celebrate so it's more impactful? That's that momentum to keep you going.
Yeah. And, in our community, every week we ask, what is your focus? And at the end of the week, like, celebrate with us.
Yes.
So if you are in community, like, start using that. Start being part of showcasing what you do and letting people celebrate you.
Yes.
It's part of showing up, like in our book club, or you mentioned enrichment, or, we usually do kind of a celebrate the year end and set for what the next year is going to be. And that's part of celebrating and sharing in community.
Yes. Participate in those things because
momentum.
Yes. And it's almost like therapeutic, right? To be able to share, but also to learn from others through that sharing is key. Yeah. And keeps that momentum going.
Well, and speaking of that sharing, that's the other part that's involved with momentum, is you've got to fuel yourself with new inputs.
Yes.
Because if we stay at the inputs that we already have, that's where we become stagnant.
Right.
So if we think about our leadership momentum and what this path looks like, we do need to continually input things.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you do. And think about, how does that fit within your ritual, right? Mm-hmm. Within your rhythm. How often are you getting exposed to new voices, new environments, right? New information, new data, right? How often do you want to tap into that, or you can tap into those things? You want to make sure that's a part of it.
Right. Like I used to, I'd be like, hey, I was listening to this podcast and blah, 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 blah. Uh-huh. I haven't been listening to my podcast lately. So I'm like, as I think about this, I'm like, oh, I need to get back to like, what are some new inputs to put there? Mm-hmm. Having Elena on with us, I know she's like big into books. Like what's your favorite book? Like for our audience, like what's your best podcast, or what's your favorite one right now, or your favorite book?
Yes. Share, right? Mm-hmm. Share. I mean, how many times do we run across an article, or I love the baseball one that you, Major League Baseball one that you posted. That
they said, like, wow, we finally realized it's more than numbers to win games.
It's about people, right? But it's so interesting, right? When you see these like new voices and new environments kind of come up, like that's not even the food industry, but they're talking about how do we shift from so much focus on data to actually focusing on people. Mm-hmm. And that's the direction we know that our food industry needs to go, but also other industries, right, struggle with it. But when you share, you're able to pick up on things that are happening in other industries, right, that we could use in the food industry. That's fueling yourself, right, with these fresh inputs. Mm-hmm. into your life, into your mind, right, so you can think about it.
Yeah. And sometimes it's really close to you. Like think of all the people you interact with on a daily basis, weekly basis. I don't know about you, but I tend to have the same group of people that I'm like, hey, how'd that go? Or like, what'd you think of that? Or how do you think I did over here? Well, human nature is we usually get people that like give us kudos. Mm-hmm. I mean, our ego is real. Like real.
It's true.
So it takes us to really step outside of this comfort zone of people. And yes, that is part of like safe spaces, knowing that we will get feedback. But who's someone that's maybe outside that circle that you respect their opinion and advice, and you could look to say, I'm looking for some fresh inputs, and I'm curious what you see here about me, or about this project, or insert. Mm-hmm. So our inputs don't always have to be like external media sources. They can be the people around us.
Yes. And that's important, right? That's why it's so important to share, right? So people can pick up on these new, ideas that might be new to them, right? A new way of thinking, because that's important as we think about growth, right? And leadership growth. If we're just in our own little box, we're going to become obsolete. We talk about all the time how like things are shifting in industry, and even the skills that we need today. First of all, we don't have the skills that we need to be successful today, but even in 5 years, the World Economic Forum was saying that in 5 years, even those skills are going to shift, right? Like what we need in industry. And so if we're just in our own little box and not engaging with other people and not having these fresh inputs, then we will become stagnant, right? We will become obsolete to the people that we're trying to hire, right? The people we're trying to engage, the people we're trying to build our culture. And we see that. I feel like we see that in the food industry right now.
Well, we do. And I think that's the part that's kind of the disconnect, because we want different outcomes. We want more growth. We want these things. All of that starts with building capacity as leaders and within people.
Yes.
So that's why, as we talked about this leadership momentum, and that's a new word that we're kind of using, because we're like, we need this momentum to keep that capacity going, to keep that growth going, to keep problem solving in innovative ways. It's not going to happen with where we are today. You all know that. We've talked about that.
Yeah, we have to do something different, and we have to pull ourselves out of I'm going to say the old way of leadership, right? Where we, the Mercer report kind of talk about like this shift in contract between employees and their employers. And that is real, right? That shift is happening, and we're still trying to lead in a world that just does not exist for us anymore, right? Like, we know, we were talking to someone earlier today where they talked about their workforce, 60% has been there less than 2 years. And COVID was a huge driver from that. Well, we're different organizations than we were pre-COVID, than who we are today. And if our organizations, or if us as leaders, right, really, I should say, because we're the ones leading the organizations, if we don't shift, we're stuck in 2019, right? 2020. And we know, like, just look at our own personal lives. It's so different than it was in 2020. Yeah. And we're not going to make the progress we want to see if we're stuck there.
No, that's why this momentum is so important. So to recap, when we think about leadership momentum, it's creating a leadership growth ritual. Right? We need a rhythm, a ritual, a practice.
Yes.
We need to stay in conversation, whether that's accountability, community. We need to stay in conversation. Part of our momentum is connecting to our bigger why. Like, right? If we don't know why, it's hard to get momentum and get energy around it.
Right.
But when we have why, now that creates some of its own energy to keep moving. Having momentum means we also like to see growth. So we need to make it visible and fun.
Fun, that's right. You need a laugh, right?
Fun in there.
There you go.
It doesn't need to be boring. I mean, we're humans. We like a little bit of spice. So.
That's right.
And then the last one is like, fuel yourself with fresh inputs and insights. If we're just kind of doing these other parts, but we're not having something new coming in, we'll kind of be stagnant.
Yeah.
So keep these things going, and they will work together. They will complement each other, and you will stay on this path of momentum so that you can really step into that leading your team, building capacity, helping you personally and professionally thrive.
So we are curious, how do you plan on keeping momentum going? How do you plan on keeping your leadership momentum going? And we hope, right, that you join us in our programs to help with that, whether it's enrichment, which is tomorrow, which we're so excited about, or if it's fueling yourself with new inputs where you need to join a program and get some of those leadership skills and start to develop that leadership ritual for yourself. We're all here for it. We want to hear about it.
We are, right? And if you are thinking about Bootcamp or Strategic Leader, and I bring those two up specifically because those cohorts start early May.
Yes.
Perfect time to join in. Perfect time.
Yes, it is.
Been on the fence, jump.
Your time really is now, right? And the longer you wait, right, the more you're going to live in this space of problems, right? Uncertainty, lack, right? Stagnant. Stagnant.
Great leaders are great learners. So step into that learning to be even greater.
Yes. And we want to hear about it. So reach out to us, send us an email. We love getting emails from you all on what you're practicing, what you're looking at, right? Sharing your wins, right? Even if you're not sure where to share your win to right now, let us know. We want to celebrate you.
We do. And part of why this leadership momentum conversation is so important today is because we're taking some time off in May.
We are.
Part of our momentum is pulling in a little bit of time to reflect on what Real Talk looks like. It's part of resting a little so that we can come back fully charged.
Yes.
So we're taking the month of May off.
We are. And when we kick back Real Talk, we have some activities happening in June, which will be exciting, like the roundtables, and we have some workshop series that's coming up. But when Real Talk comes back, we hope that it will be rejuvenated, right? When we think about the momentum that we have with you all here at Real Talk, but also within Catalyst, right? How does that fit in with the momentum that we are on? So we're excited about that, and we can't wait to see the new Real Talk.
It's going to be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
stay tuned. If you haven't gone out to our website to subscribe to the event calendar, I recommend going out and doing that.
Yes.
Because when we add an event, you're going to get notified and it'll go right onto your calendar. So you can decide, is that what I'm showing up for today or not? But as we start rescheduling Real Talk and kicking off the new version, that will also be on your calendar so that you can join us when that takes place.
Yes. Yes. So we hope to see you over the end of April. I mean, I can't believe May is next week.
Right.
Next week is May. We have a lot going on. We hope to see you in Bootcamp. It starts May 6th. Strategic starts May 8th. We hope to see you in one of those. And then, of course, in our enrichment, right? To keep that momentum going. We also have book club coming up early May.
I know. There's all kinds of things
Mm-hmm.
for your leadership momentum.
Yes, the event calendar. That's what we should call that, event calendar, right? Our momentum calendar will keep you on track with right where you are, right? And what your rhythm is. So please join us.
Absolutely. So until we see you next time, thank you so much for joining us, for being here, for this part of the conversation.
Yes.
We hope you make it a great week, and we'll catch you again soon.
See you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.